has so lovingly been keeping up. We have, how many of those do we have, Sharon? Three of them. Okay. All right. Turning the fourth. When I first came 12 years ago, the books were a curiosity, and I looked through them and thought, oh, this is beautifully made and with such care, and it gave me some idea of some of the events and things that had happened here at the church. But when I first came, I still didn't have names to go with the faces or stories, and it was nice, but it was just a book. And now 12 years later, as I go through the book, and I know names and faces, and not just the stories that are in the book, but the stories that are behind the book, in between the pages, it means a lot to me. Those of you who are married, do you remember the first time you ever were shown by your spouse one of their family photo albums, and you had to feign interest? Because you didn't know who any of the people were or any of their stories, but you were good, and you looked through and you let your spouse tell the stories. And then little by little, as the years went by, and as you met people over holidays and at family reunions and weddings and baptisms and whatever other occasions there were, and you started to put names to faces and stories, and then you could go back and you could look at the album and go, oh yeah, that's cousin so-and-so. And all of a sudden, it meant something to you. I think the Bible, in many ways, is like a photo album. I never quite understood how folks understand when they pass out a Bible on the corner that somebody's just supposed to magically pick it up and read it and go, oh! Because there are so many characters and so many stories, and it's so baffling and confusing. But if you continue not only to read, but then start to get to know the rest of God's people and are involved in church, and you hear the stories and you hear the names, and then all of a sudden, little by little by little by little, the stories begin to mean something. They're not just random people on a page doing strange things thousands of years ago. Now, for sure, you can still pick up the Bible in the same way I still have extended family members that I get confused about who they are. You start reading through the begats, and it's kind of like that. Who the heck is Abinadab, right? You know, but for the most part, you start picking up the story. The writer of the book of Hebrews was in a similar situation. The probable writer of Hebrews is a man by the name of Apollos. You might remember him from 1 Corinthians. Paul knows him. He talks about that Paul planted and Apollos watered. But God gives the growth, if that's a familiar verse. Apollos, you can tell by his name, was Greek or Gentile in origin. So he came to the Hebrew scriptures without any familiarity of who these people were. But over years and years of beginning to hear the stories and hanging out with the rest of the disciples, they became so familiar to him that he began to be able to write very succinctly about each of the characters. And in this particular passage of Hebrews, he kind of pulls out from all the many stories that he could pull out, kind of what he sees as the core faith legacy of each person. He talks about Cain and Cain's offering of his first fruits, and how that was a faithful gesture on Cain's part. He talks about Enoch, who kind of foreshadowed eternal life and being taken from us without actually dying. He talked about Noah's obedience, listening and building the ark, even in the midst of people telling him he was probably crazy. Sure, big flood. Gotcha, Noah. He talked about Abraham who was set off in a direction where he had no idea where he was going. Lechi lach, just go forth, God said, and I'll show you the place where you're going. Had no idea, but he faithfully put one step in front of the other and went. And if we'd continued to read, Apollos continues writing in Hebrews about Isaac and Jacob and Joseph and Moses and Aaron and Joshua, on and all their different faith legacies, the things that made them special, the things that planted seeds in the people of God to make us who and what we are. Talked about Joshua and the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant over the Jordan River into the promised land, that promised land that Moses never got to see, but he knew it was coming. He could see it from a distance and knew that made it all worthwhile, the journey. Even if he never got there himself, he knew he would help get his people there. And the Ark of the Covenant was like this big memory box. It was carrying all the stuff that the people would need. It had the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments on the tablets in it. It had a gold pot that had manna in it to remind the people of all the provision for all those years in the wilderness that God provided bread. And it had Aaron's rod in it that has this wonderful story about how the rod actually miraculously bloomed. It budded. To show that Aaron indeed would be the ancestor of the Levitical priesthood. And the ark was this big memory box. Speaking of which, I ran across a book called The Memory Box that I thought was particularly good for All Saints. And it's a children's book, but we're all children, right? I'm going to have Laura pop up some pictures for us. I'm going to read this story. I lost my balloon once. We've all been there, either ourselves or with kids, right? I tried so hard to hold on tight and never let it go, but it was windy, and I was running. I watched it fly, higher than the trees, above the clouds, past where I couldn't see. I was sad. But not as sad as I am now. I can always get another balloon. But I could never have another you. I miss you. Sometimes I wonder what happens to your love now that you're gone. Did it die too? Because I'm scared I'll forget you. Sometimes I wish I could still give you a hug. I would hug you so tight in a great big bear hug and never let you go. I'm making a box so I won't forget you, with all our memories, like sand from the beach where we played and left footprints as we ran from the crashing waves. I want to go everywhere we've been, everywhere you've been, everywhere we wanted to go together. Sometimes I go to places that help me think of you. I look around and remember. It makes me smile. And then I find the perfect thing for my memory box. Some days are good. I laugh, I smile. Other days I wonder if I'll ever stop feeling sad you're gone. But I always think of you, happy or sad. So many things remind me of you. Today, I'm asking everyone about their favorite memories of you. Silly ones, sweet ones, some that are just so you. I'm listening, hanging on every word, imagining you laughing with us. It helps me when I think about our special times, and it even helps to still do the things that we'd planned to do together. And when I do, you're still with me in my heart. Now I'm making new memories. My first time on a roller coaster, trying a new sport. You can add some here. Going to a cool restaurant, exploring a new place. I'll always share these memories with you. I was afraid I would forget you, but I won't. You'll always be with me no matter where I go. Whenever I miss you, I'll think of you, and I will never forget. What are the things in your memory boxes of your loved ones? What are the pictures in your photo album? What are the words that dance around in your spirit when you think of them? I read through, as I do every year, the eulogies from the loved ones that passed in the year, and I picked out some words. You may recognize your loved one in them. Thoughtful, kind, devoted, gracious, friendly, humble, enduring, caring, serving, wise, generous, poetic, adventurous, lighthearted, joyful, perseverant, industrious, welcoming, hospitable, loyal, faithful, just. You've got lots more words, lots more pictures, lots more objects in your memory box. But I want to push you one step further, because you have way more than any of those things. You have in your very core the seeds of those people. And you have the opportunity to sow those seeds in the fertile field of the world, in the field of God's kingdom,